How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the What's Up Eddie channel, Divine Therapy Sessions. And of course, I'm the one and only Eddie. So glad to have you guys back. And these are my Divine Therapy Sessions. And today's Eddie's Love Bug Advice. We're going to talk about, this is part 2 of higher level connections. And this is just going to go into, or just more concentrating on the higher level. Okay, so it's not, okay, it's awesome. So I always like to be specific when we say in a relationship, right? Like with a significant other, because we spend the most time with this person, right? And we are who we spend our time with consistently, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be around that person. So you don't want to be around people who are going to be a detriment to you, right? Or even stagnancy, because stagnant is just as bad as someone who's extremely low vibrational, right? But I always like to talk about the significant other because that's who you spend most of your time with. That's who you're bouncing your ideas off of all the time, right? But it doesn't have to be just your significant other. These relationships could be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your friends, your close friendships, right? You are the average, you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with, right? So just know that, like, take that into account, right? And a soulmate doesn't have to be a loved one, a significant other, like a wife or a husband, depending, you know, whatever your get up is. It could very well be a soulmate, could be a friend. And so some of the cool signs of when you're in this type of relationship, and you guys, you know, the crazy part is this: you could also be in these soulmate, twin loves. There's a whole bunch of different, you know, twin flames. There's a lot of different names, right? But there are these journeys that exist, and sometimes you don't end up with this person in the end, right? You're like, what? Well, what am I wasting my time listening to this video for, right? Like, the good thing is this, you guys. Everything at the end of the day is a learning lesson, right? It's teaching us something more about ourselves, and it's getting us further along. There is a divine plan, and that's so freaking hard for us to understand, because, you guys, I always say it, we act like children, all of us. If you go back down to the bare minimum of why we do things, it is because what happened to us as kids. You and I got taught the wrong way, or if we got overspoiled. It just depends on how you got raised as a kid. And we take those childhood answers and bring them into adulthood. And sometimes we can get away with it, and sometimes we cannot. But I always say this is, when we get super angry, or we get super jealous or super envious, something happens to us. We start getting to a place where we resort back to childhood, to tantrums, severe anger, right? So I always laugh about this when I'm teaching people. It's like, you'll know yourself when you get to a point back to when you resort back to childhood, and that tells you how you are, right? Okay, so getting back to what I was saying, when we're talking about soulmates, and, you know, it could be anyone, like I said, what is a key note or a key sign that you are in a soulmate connection? And one of them that I noticed is that you have this long knowing, but you've never known this person before, right? It is, in my opinion, is not the 3D connection, the 3rd density connection. It is, and not the 4th density. It's the 5D connection, which is the soul connection, right? It's more than what the eyes can see. You've known this person from a past life, right? So that's what I'm trying to say, or, you know, past life, whatever the case may be. So we don't know, right? So there's when you dive into this, there's the Akasha records, but these connections, you can feel it though. I've said this many times. I'm like, I don't know how, but I've seen you somewhere. I know that I've seen you, or I know. One moment. Yeah, you come to a place, one of my friends was passing by. So you come to this moment where you're like, well, I've known this person somehow. And that is a keynote that you've known this person from a past life, right? Or it's a soulmate or a twin flame. It is someone, that's an indication that it's going to be someone important to you. Always remember that. Now, what are the uplifting things when you're in these types of relationships? And this is what I like to talk about, because you want to be in a connection that keeps you on your toes, right? You don't, like I said, stagnant energy is just as bad to me as something that's like super detrimental, like being in an abusive relationship, or being in an argumentative relationship. So when someone's pushing you to be yourself, that is and it's not coming from a place of envy, but from a place of manipulation, because a lot of the times we do that as well, right? We resort back to those childhood traumas or childhood tendencies that don't work. But when you have someone who supports you and wishes you the best, like in spiritual connections that are high level, people will, it's like, there's this person who just came into my life. I don't want to say her name, just for privacy matters, but like, it's this type of high level connections that I'm talking about. Like, oh wow, you're not doing well, or your significant other is not doing well, they're in a bad place right now, let me send them love through Reiki. And it's no benefit to their own. Of course, if you think about the principle of it, yes, anything that you put out into the universe will come back to you, and it will come back to you sometimes when you're doing it from your, or when you, not sometimes, but when you're doing it from your heart, it'll come back even more. So it's the law of giving and receiving, right? But what I'm trying to say is this, is that most people don't understand this concept, and most people are taught from a young age is that whenever I give something, something has to come back. Or if I do something, because of time, right? We've been taught that time is money. And I feel like we do that with people when it's supposed to be an emotional thing, right? It's supposed to be a spiritual emotion thing, in my opinion. And sometimes we get that confused with people and money and these this backwards type of thinking, right? It shouldn't be that way. But when you find someone who, so that's what I'm saying with these 5D connections, is that like, also another thing is the growth that takes place with these types of relationships. If you are in any type of, before what you want to call like either trauma bond or if you're still in shadow, or you have things that aren't at the surface yet, these relationships are going to bring those things to the surface. Usually those persons are just past that mark, or they're in the same energy, right? And they will bring it to they'll trigger you. These people trigger you all the time, and whatever, everything that they're saying, right? And a lot of the times we get triggered too because someone else is doing the work, and when we're not doing it, and we're being forced to look at it, and that we see that person's having success, and that's what these relationships are meant for, right? That is the progress that I'm talking about. And sometimes these higher level connections don't always feel good, right? But we always think that pleasure is like in mass amounts is good for us, and it really isn't. A lot of the times it's extremely uncomfortable for the brain. You're not supposed to be in a state of bliss at all times, or in a state of pleasure. It's actually agitating to the human being. So, and most people are like, well, what are you talking about? I want to be there. No, you don't. Seriously, you don't. So, and another thing that I think, and this is what I'll end it at, is in these relationships too, they're not all physical. Yes, physicality is a wonderful thing with intimacy, and I find that because even with men, the men don't say this as much too, but it is an emotional thing, right? Especially when a man who is spiritual and has got out of just physicality, it no longer becomes all about you know what, right? You know what I'm talking about. I don't want to say it on my YouTube channel, but it stops becoming all about that, and it is an emotional thing for men as well. I've been in relationships where it's been just about physicality, and once you've grown past a certain mark and done the work, yeah, if you're not there emotionally, it's like it's really hard to get through it, right? But when you actually are in these types of relationships, it's cosmic, man. They call it, you know, cosmic love, and it's like something you've never experienced before, right? And that is healing in itself as well. And yeah, you guys, these higher level connections are calling to each and every one of us. And it's like I always say, go back to the nitty gritty of it all, man. Like, it depends on where you're at in your life. And half this stuff is going to go over your head if you're not really there, right? But if you're on this channel and you're watching it, something's calling, yearning for you to get out of, break free of the matrix, break free of your own self. And it's going to take work. Watch my other videos, you guys. There's steps to it. Find out where you're at. Know thyself. Know self-awareness, right? And it'll get you to where you need it. What are the next steps to take? And you guys, all the time, at all times, your team around you that you can't see, the unseen team, are trying to give you information for you for the next steps to take. And they're all around us, and these signs are all around us. I love you guys so much. You guys are divine beings. You are much loved. God loves us. You have all the ability in you to know who you are again, and know that you are limitless. You are full of divine creative genius, full of potentiality beyond max. And we have this in us. All it takes is for us to get the grime out first, right? And then we get set into a new motion, a new forward projection, a way of living. And you guys are so loved, goddesses and gods out there. Yeah, you guys are God, and God is everything. I am God, and God is everything. I love you guys so much. Catch you guys in the next one. Make sure to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. All right, peeps. We catch you in the flip.